A very warm and hearty good day to all of you. My name is Ramanpreet Kaur Bhatia. I'm a chartered accountant from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, a certified practicing accountant from CPA Australia, and a distinguished Toastmaster from Toastmasters International. In this video, I'm going to talk about the internal environment analysis of an organization. What is meant by that internal analysis? What are the different steps involved in internal analysis? And also, I'll be talking in detail about identifying various shareholders and their needs, and why this knowledge is essential in determining the strategic direction of an organization. I hope you all will find some value in this video. What is internal analysis? Do we all understand our bodies, our strengths, our capabilities? What are we capable of? And we know our limitations also. This is something which I cannot do. That is, in simple words, the concept of internal analysis. If I know my capabilities, if I know my strengths, at the same time, if I know my weaknesses, if I know where I'm lagging behind, I can use this knowledge to compete with others. I can use this knowledge to go ahead. I know how I have to use my capabilities to achieve my goals. I know how I have to use my limited capabilities to achieve my goals, to achieve a good performance in future. Internal analysis. So why is internal analysis important? It means assessing the internal analysis is assessing the key shareholders, their needs, the performance of an organization. What is the purpose? To understand where am I standing right now in terms of my competitors. Where am I standing right now in terms of the goals that I have set? Or maybe in terms of my own capabilities, I will set my goals. So that is why internal analysis is an important feature when when we want to establish our strategic goals. It plays a very important role in determining the strategic direction, determining our strategy. How are we going to achieve our goals? So that is the importance of internal analysis, where an organization wants to assess itself. Now we know when we were studying module 2, we read about the remote environment of an industry, which is the steeple analysis. Then we studied about the operational environment of an industry, which was the Porter analysis. Now, right now, what we are trying to understand is internal analysis. I know my outside feature. I know the bubble outside my organization. Now I want to understand myself. So internal analysis, what does it do? It assesses the internal factors, such as the key stakeholders, the operational performance, and organization's capability. If we understand our stakeholders, if we understand their requests, their interests, their requirements, then we can easily identify the direction of our strategy. Because the needs of those stakeholders determine or they influence how we as managers or how we as CPAs can drive the organization to make best use of its resources and capabilities to satisfy the needs of our shareholders. If I know what is my capability, what is my performance, what are the resources that I have, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, then I compare it with the future objectives, and those objectives are the benchmarks against which I'm going to compare my performance, my capabilities. Right? So what happens is the shareholders' needs, the shareholders' expectations, they decide our future goals. Those future goals are the benchmark against which I have to assess my capability. We'll be studying in detail about the measurement of these performances. What is the performance that I'm talking about? How am I going to measure that performance? What is the criteria or what is the benchmark of measuring my own performance? So that I can relate my performance towards the fulfillment of my objectives. The internal analysis helps an organization in identifying the strategic capabilities. Why? To compete with other organizations. Because the ultimate purpose of any organization, why an organization works, is to earn profit. How will we earn profit? Only if we overshadow our competitors. How will we overshadow our competitors? Once we know their strengths, which we understood from the external analysis. Then, when we know our own capabilities, we compare the two, we compare the external, the competitors' strengths, we compare our internal strengths, we make a gap analysis, our own capabilities, so that once we know what is my shortcoming, then only will I be able to improve it. Then only I will be able to improve my performance. Then only I will be able to overpower my competitors. So earn my to earn more profits, which is my ultimate goal, I have to understand myself. That is the process of internal analysis. What are we going to do? First of all, we are going to identify the stakeholders. We are going to identify their needs. Then we will understand, we will make our goals accordingly. Those goals will be our benchmarks. So we will compare, we will assess our current performance and we will try and match our performance with those benchmarks, with those objectives. Right. After that, we will do a gap analysis and then we will do a SWOT analysis. Right. So what is our first step? Our first step is to identify our stakeholders. Now, this is a diagram, which is the framework for strategy analysis. Once we have the insight of the internal and external environment, and after this external analysis, we combine the two. We create an integrated analysis of an organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which is the last part. The process of internal analysis, last part is SWOT. The next is a gap analysis. What is gap analysis? We will study that later, that we identify the end where the current performance falls short of the desired performance. Once we know, it provides a basis for developing and then ultimately implementing an effective future strategy. So what we have to do, we have to understand our external business drivers, steeple, porter, right? We have to understand the external influences. We have to understand the stakeholders. We have to understand what drives our performance, which will be operational drivers, people and organizational drivers, strategic drivers. Then we will do a SWOT analysis of the two, which is a kind of gap analysis, right? And then we will try and overcome our weaknesses. So that is the framework of strategy analysis. We have to understand external environment. We have to understand internal influences. The gap which is created, we have to try and cover that gap. Now, the very first topic, the subtopic which we are going to do in internal analysis is we have to identify key stakeholders and we have to identify their needs. Now, stakeholders, they not only mean the internal stakeholders. I am not talking about the shareholders. I am not talking about those people who have invested their money in the organization with an objective to earn profit. I'm talking about the stakeholders as a whole. It could mean external stakeholders, people who are not part of my organization, but who influence my decisions and my organizational goals or my organizational performance, plus the internal stakeholders, right? There is a term in the module which is strategy blind points or dumb practice. What is it? It means failure to recognize the important stakeholder group. When we do not identify a key stakeholder group, that is called a blind spot. That is called a dumb practice. If I do not know my stakeholder, if I do not know their needs, if I do not know their expectations, how will I make my goals? How will I improve my performance? So that is strategy blind point and or the concept of dumb practice, which means the failure to recognize the important stakeholder groups. Now, what are internal stakeholders? Internal stakeholders could be, so the table that I have given here in this slide is just a rough one. We always call it as an inclusive list, right? There could be many other internal stakeholders. If anything comes in your mind, maybe you can just go and fill it here. For different industry, for different organization, the internal stakeholders as well as the external stakeholders could be different, right? Internal stakeholders, who are the internal stakeholders? Employees, board members, shareholders. Who are the external ones? Customers, suppliers. Supplier is not part of my organization. So it's an external stakeholder, but still I have to understand I have to understand the needs of my supplier. I have to understand the expectations of my supplier so that I can take those into account, make my goals and improve my performance. Could be trade unions, it could be community at large, it could be government, it could be competitors, right? So just understand that stakeholder is anybody and everybody who has interest in my organization and whose actions can determine my organizational, can determine or can have an effect on my organizational performance and my organizational goals. So those are internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Now in this slide we have, it's again an inclusive kind of list. Identify key stakeholders and their needs. If I talk about the shareholders, what have the shareholders done? They have invested money in my organization with the view to earn profits. So what are they interested in? What will be their expectation from the organization? It will be return on investment, profit and market share, CSR. What is CSR? Corporate social responsibility, right? Shareholders are also interested in that, whether I'm fulfilling my social responsibility or not, whether I'm projecting a good image of my organization in front of the large community or not. Reputation and rankings. When we have board members are also, they're more interested in knowing the goodwill or the prestige of an organization. Then again, the profit and market share, because they are sitting in the board capacity, they want to ensure that the shareholders are getting enough returns on their investments, right? And they are also interested in increased value. Again, I'm repeatedly saying that this is an inclusive list. You can add different kind of stakeholders in this list depending upon the organization that you are working with, right? So, and the needs of these stakeholders, that's also a very inclusive kind of list. It could be much more than this or much lesser than this. It could be very different from this or similar to these needs. Employees, they are interested in getting more wages. They are interested in the safety. They are interested that whether they are getting insured for their work that they are rendering. They care about the recognition, whether they are being rewarded nicely or not. Then whether they are getting opportunities to work more, or they're getting opportunities for their professional development. Government, government is interested that whether an organization is innovating more products. In corporate social responsibility, in the safety of the workers who are working in that organization. How? By making different kind of labor laws, maybe, right? Efficacy, continuity. Then customers, If I go to an organization, if I am the buyer of some organization or some industry, what am I interested in? I just want to see that I'm getting a genuine product. I am just interested that will this organization be there in the long run? So stability or availability, stable margin, innovative products. My organization will flourish, will prosper only if I'm able to offer innovative products. Whether as a customer, I'm getting the value for my money. Then in terms of suppliers, what will be their needs from an organization? The growth, market share, stable orders, profits or good margin, good procedures, on time payments. If somebody is sponsoring an organization, why would why should I invest my money? Why should I sponsor you? Because I expect a higher performance from your side. Because I expect that me as a sponsor, I will get a huge fan base from your organization. I will get a reputation. If your organization is doing well, and if I am your sponsor, my reputation will increase. Through your organization, I can publicize my products. I have left this column blank for community because you can just go ahead and fill the different kind of needs, different kind of expectations, which you can think from your point of view as a community. What do you expect? What do you want from an organization? Right. So why is this? Why is it important to understand these key stakeholders so that I know what these people expect from me? Accordingly, my goals will be set. Accordingly, I can measure my performance, whether I have the capabilities, whether I have the strength, whether I have the resources to fulfill these expectations. So that is the first step of internal analysis, which is identify key stakeholders and their needs. Now, what is the second step? The second step is align the needs of various stakeholder groups with the strategy. Categorize the stakeholders on priority basis and different techniques to handle or tackle different stakeholders. Once I know that these are the needs of the stakeholders, I will try and align those needs with my strategy. I will make my strategy in such a way that my organization is able to fulfill all those needs of different stakeholder groups. Once I have done that, I know these are my stakeholders. But not everybody is equally important, right? Some people I know, if we go to the previous slide, we will see that what we have here is the board members, employees, government, customers, supplier. Now, if we take supplier, right? It could be a small supplier. It could be a supplier from whom I'm buying from. I'm buying in very small quantities. Will that supplier be big enough for me to make my strategy as per his expectation? No. Or maybe to some extent, yes. But will I take his expectations on such a priority basis that I alter my strategy altogether? Maybe again, no. But if I am buying from some supplier in large quantity and I know if that supplier vanishes or if that supplier stops to supply his commodities to my organization, it will have huge impact on my organization's working. In that case, I will definitely try and take this big suppliers input, right? So of course, we have to identify key stakeholders, we have to identify their needs, but at the same time, we have to prioritize who is more important for me and who is, we won't say that nobody is, I mean, less important, or we would say on priority wise, they fall on the little bit lower slab, right? So, what is it that we have to do? Once we have aligned the needs Once we have aligned the needs of various stakeholders group with the strategy, we will categorize the stakeholders on priority basis. And once we have done that, we will use different techniques to tackle these different stakeholders. How? how will you, once you have categorized the stakeholders, what are the different techniques that you're going to tackle, that with which you're going to tackle or handle these different stakeholders? Through power interest grid. Now, what is power interest grid? This a power interest grid can be used to assess and understand the different levels of interest and powers of each stakeholder group. Why is this important? Again, as I've said, not all stakeholders are important. Each stakeholder has a varying level of legitimacy, power, influence over the organization. So, what do? We plot these stakeholders and we try to judge or assess who has the power to influence the direction, who has the interest in my organization strategy. Therefore, the reason why we make a power interest grid is we want to identify, we want to understand, prioritize those stakeholders, right? Influence power to affect our decisions, we will keep them on higher level so that we understand their needs and we can attend to those needs. Because as an organization, I have to balance. I have to balance the needs of stakeholders and I have to manage those activities which the stakeholders might not like. For example, I said that employees want to have more wages. Employees want to have stability of employment. Whereas the shareholders or the primary people who have invested their money in the organization, they might not want to increase the budget on wages, right? So the needs are different. And employee wants more wages, but a shareholder does not want to spend more on wages. Both have different needs, and we have to manage both the needs. Right? The needs are different, their expectations from the organization are different. At the same time, keeping in mind the expectations of shareholders not increasing the budget on wages, and also keeping in mind the expectations or needs of the employees of stable employment. We have to align the needs of the customers also, right? So a shareholder does not want increase on budget for wages. A customer, the employee wants more wages, employee wants stability. These are the two stakeholders. At the same time, there is a customer who wants a good product, who wants a good product at a reasonable price, right? So we have to align, we have to match, we have to map the needs of shareholders not increasing budget on wages, needs of employees of having increased wages, expectation of customers having a good product. So that is all what we are going to do in power interest grids. Now, this is power interest grids. Based on these expectations, we classify these stakeholders on the four corners of the grid. So these are subject, crowd player, context matter, context setter, players, crowd. Now, what is subject? Let us understand who is a subject. A subject are those people, those stakeholders with low power, but with very high level of interest. If you see in this grid, the lower line, it suggests the x-axis, it suggests the power going from lower point to the upper point. Then we have interest going from the lower point to the upper point. Right? So these people, the interest can be either positive or negative, but they have very little impact on the strategic decision. But because of their high level of interest, they may develop greater power over time. How? Their interest is more, they have less power. They want to grab that power. So what will they do? They will lobby with others. For example, the employees and the shareholders, they fall in this category, and also it also includes certain suppliers and customers who rely on the organization. right? So they form groups among themselves and then they try and gather power. How do we deal with them? We consult them. We consider the expectations and requirements of other stakeholders. Although they do not have much power, but their interest, high interest, will always keep them engaged. They will always try and interfere with the strategic decision. Now they do not have power, but they may try and join together so that they increase their power to impact the organization. Right? So we have to consult them. We have to just talk to them. The second category is the crowd. Now, these are the people with both low power and low interest. That's why we call them as crowd, right? Their interest is not much. At the same time, their power is also very low. They have minimal influence, almost negligible influence on strategic decisions. But as a good organization, what should I do? I should at least have the courtesy to inform them. I may have this temptation that I should ignore because they do not have any power, they do not have any interest. But as a good organization, I have to inform them. It is very effective to keep communicating with these stakeholders. For example, the public utility organizations. They will just inform the customers that there will be interruption to service in an area at any given point in time. As a customer, I cannot do anything, but I feel good that yes, maybe I am that much important that they have at least bothered to inform. So that is crowd for us, who have less interest and less power, and we have to inform them of our decision. The next category is the players. That is the most important category. Why? Because these are those with the high interest and high power. They are the most critical stakeholders. We have to consider them while making strategic decisions. They have the influence on strategic decisions. It could be senior executives, some employees with the specialist skills, large stakeholders, large shareholders, large directors. So, what is the strategy that I'll adopt? I have to partner with them. I have to ensure that they are fully involved. I have to work closely with them. I have to give a boost to the needs of these shareholders so that I can have an effective management of the organization. The last one is the context setter. Now, again, see in the grid, they have high power, but they have less interest. They are those who have the power, but they might not have interest, or they might have very low interest. In an organization, they have the ability to influence an organization's strategy, but they're unlikely to get involved unless and until you know that there is something significant, something big which is happening. Example of this could be government and regulators. So how do I have to deal with them? I have to manage them. I have to listen to these groups. I have to address to their concerns so that I can get their little acceptance. Right. The example given in the book is that managers must ensure that any government regulations are understood by the organization and are followed as required. Keep the channels of communication open. They might be disinterested, but they are powerful. So that's how I'm going to manage, or these are some of the techniques of interacting with different stakeholder groups. It is very important that an organization ensures that there is clear, concise, and correct information which is being imparted or which is being communicated to all these kind of shareholders, an effective channel of communication. So it is very necessary, the very first and the most important step of internal analysis, that we have to identify who are these internal stakeholders, what is their power to influence the strategy, what is their interest in determining the strategy, and then accordingly we make our strategy. Now, one of the stakeholders that I might have missed in this is the strategic leader, because these a strategic leader are is the one who usually display passion and commitment and talent. But if change is needed, if need arises, such strategic leader should be able to relinquish his or her interest. They are ready to transfer their power, they are ready to delegate their power. So it is important to keep the strategic leaders also in to keep in mind while making the strategy. And based on this power interest grid, we will understand the needs of the stakeholders. We will understand the techniques, how we have to deal with these stakeholders. And accordingly, we will design our strategy, our direction. So that is it for this video. In our next video, I'll be talking about the data analytics, how the different data helps me in doing the internal analysis, and accordingly we will move towards understanding the strategic drivers, the people and organization drivers, and the operational drivers through which we assess our internal performance of an organization. I hope you all have found some value in this video. We'll meet soon together. Thank you.